Welcome back to Ben's Book Club. Today we are diving into the book Make It Stick, The Science of Successful Learning. We're going to kick things off by exploring a fascinating and, well, a highly counterintuitive paradox. It turns out, the study methods that feel the absolute most comfortable and productive to us, yeah, they actually produce the absolute worst long-term retention. If you've ever felt like you studied super hard but just forgot everything right after a test or a big presentation, this explainer is absolutely going to rewire how you approach learning.
So let's start with a little confession here. Think back to how you studied in college or even high school. Did you pull those all-nighters? Was your textbook just a neon rainbow because you were using like 5 different colored highlighters? It's a universal trap, for sure. We've all relied on cramming, color coding, and rereading our notes until our eyes literally blurred. We thought we were doing it right, but according to cognitive psychologists and decades of actual research, we were essentially just wasting our time and energy.
So, how do we fix it? Well, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll uncover the illusion of knowing. Second, embracing desirable difficulties. Third, the power of retrieval. Fourth, spacing and interleaving. And finally, number 5, making it stick daily. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The illusion of knowing, and exactly why familiarity is a trap.
You know, most of us study by just rereading our highlights and underlining text over and over again. The authors of our source material call this the illusion of knowing. See, familiarity feels really smooth, right? And it's completely recognition-based. Because the text looks familiar when you read it for the 3rd or 4th time, your brain actually confuses that really easy recognition with actual mastery. It feels incredibly productive in the moment, but the data clearly shows this kind of flimsy information simply evaporates within a matter of days. True mastery, on the other hand, isn't about smooth reading at all. It is durable, it's highly effortful, and it is firmly retrieval-based.
Moving on to Section 2. Embracing desirable difficulties. This is a massive paradigm shift. Learning is deeper and more durable when it is effortful. That quote right there anchors the entire narrative of the science of successful learning. It's the golden rule from the researchers behind the book. Seriously, if you take away just one single thing from this explainer today, let it be this exact phrase. If your learning process feels too easy, it probably isn't sticking. True learning absolutely requires deliberate, conscious friction.
Now, what's really fascinating about this formal definition is how counterintuitive the whole strategy is. Coined by psychologist Robert Bjork, desirable difficulties are short-term obstacles that make learning feel way slower and much more effortful, but, and here's the kicker, they drastically improve long-term retention and the transfer of your skills to new situations. As humans, we're naturally addicted to easy learning paths, but ease right now just means a fragile memory later on. Productive struggle today means incredible strength and recall tomorrow.
Section 3. The power of retrieval. Basically, why we need to stop inputting and start outputting.
Instead of just trying to burn information into your brain by staring at it, you have to actively practice pulling it out. Take the data from a joint Manitoba and UCSD study. They compared students who took a single practice test against students who simply reread the material 4 separate times. The results? The single practice test group absolutely crushed the rereaders in long-term retention when they were tested a week later. Testing yourself isn't just a way to measure your learning, it is the actual mechanism that creates the learning. Every single time you force your brain to retrieve a fact, you reconsolidate and strengthen those neural pathways connecting to it. It's like doing a rep at the gym for your memory.
Which brings us to Section 4, spacing and interleaving, or what you might call the mix-up method.
When you're organizing your study sessions, you really want to rely on the big 3 listed here. Retrieval practice, which we literally just covered, spaced practice, and interleaved practice. So let's talk about spacing. You actually want to allow a little bit of forgetting to happen right between your study sessions. I know, it sounds completely backward, right? But by leaving a gap of time, relearning the material forces your brain to work so much harder, and that effort is exactly what cements the knowledge permanently into your long-term memory. Then we have interleaving, which is all about mixing up the types of problems you solve. Blocked practice means mastering one skill repeatedly before moving on, kind of like doing 20 geometry problems all using the exact same formula. It feels incredibly efficient while you're doing it, but interleaved practice, where you mix related skills unpredictably, builds vastly superior discrimination and problem-solving abilities. You don't just learn how to execute a formula. Much more importantly, you learn how to identify which formula to choose in the very first place.
To vividly bring this concept to life, the source material uses this fantastic baseball analogy. Imagine a batter practicing in a predictable block against 10 fastballs, then 10 curveballs, then 10 changeups. Because they know exactly what's coming, they're going to look great in practice. But a batter who faces those exact same pitches completely scrambled, just random pitches, builds much better reflexes. The unpredictable interleaved practice looks a lot messier and, frankly, feels way more frustrating, but it creates far better hitters in an actual real-world game.
And hey, this science isn't just for acing tests or hitting baseballs. It applies to life-or-death mastery way outside the classroom. There was this fascinating study of surgical residents in Kansas, and it found that those who interleaved their practice of different suturing techniques improved their technical skills so much faster than the ones who just practiced one technique at a time. It proves that whether you're a student, an athlete, or literally a surgeon in an operating room, mixing it up forces your brain into a higher state of adaptation and lasting mastery.
All right, Section 5, making it stick daily. We're going to look at elaboration, generation, and reflection.
So here are 3 highly actionable steps you can apply immediately to whatever you're trying to learn today. Step 1 is generate. Try solving a problem or answering a question before you are even taught the solution. Seriously, even if you guess completely wrong, your brain primes itself to remember the correct answer so much better when it's finally revealed. Step 2 is elaborate. Explain the new concept in your own words, connecting it to something you already know, like, say, explaining a complex physics concept using a really simple cooking analogy. And step 3 is reflect. Review what you learned, what worked, and what didn't. Doing this builds your metacognition, which is just a fancy way of saying your awareness of your own learning process.
Now, if you're sitting there thinking that applying all this requires extra resources or endless hours of time, just look at the Peoria's 6th grade science classroom example from the research. The teachers there simply implemented frequent, low-stakes retrieval quizzes. That's it. They didn't overhaul the budget, they didn't add hours to the school day, but these small, daily desirable difficulties drove massive, real gains in student performance. It just goes to show that these methods are completely accessible and highly effective for absolutely anyone, anywhere.
Struggle isn't a sign that you're failing, it's the very evidence that you are actually learning. So ask yourself, what will you choose to struggle with today? Whether it's picking up a new language, mastering a workplace skill, or just getting through a really dense textbook, put down the highlighter, close the book, and test yourself. Embrace the friction. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.